Welcome to our training session. I'm Marshall Shannon with Ministry Design Training. Today we have as our special guest Rick Wells. Rick is a board-certified pastoral counselor with Behavioral Therapy Center. His master's is in Religion and Pastoral Counseling from Liberty Baptist Theological Seminary. He is a PhD candidate in Counseling Psychology at Louisiana Baptist University. He's married to Cheryl, who is a licensed professional counselor in North and South Carolina. He has 2 daughters and 2 granddaughters. He's an adjunct college instructor of religion and has taught communications at Furman University here in Greenville. He is an instructor in couple communications, core communications, and a certified facilitator for Prepare, Enrich, and the DISC model of human behavioral assessments. Rick has served as pastor of care and an advanced certified human behavior consultant and a certified leadership training specialist. And so with those credentials, we want to welcome Rick. This is his second training session, and we're looking forward to what he's going to teach us today. Rick, take it away.
Thank you, Marshall. I want to do a quick review of our first session, just to remind everybody that we did an overview as far as the predominance of premarital counseling and blended families that are coming into the churches today. And one of the things that I work with is, and I've seen a dramatic trend and increase in, is the fact of the number of blended families that come to me that are in crisis, in struggle, that are being challenged and have not had the opportunity to look at what it is to be a blended family before they said their I do's. So today I wanted to look at some specific interventions that can help pastors better understand how to do, and if you notice on the screen we have effective pre-remarital counseling, because premarital counseling is different than pre-remarital counseling, and we're going to look at some of these interventions today and how as pastors do we become effective and what do we need to understand in helping families become effective at blending their families together. I do this work based on the research of Ron Deal, who is the author of the Smart Step Family, and also with the work of the National Step Family Resource Center. This, in conjunction with the training that I've had in working with blended families, will put together some ideas that, once again, will help the pastors out there and Step Family Ministries better understand what it is and what we need to do for effective intervention. Now, before we get started in the specifics, once again, I want to emphasize what a huge population and demographics we have and some of the challenges that we as pastors are going to have when we're dealing with the pre-remarital counseling of our families. A national study of couples that are creating step families, one of the things that we come up with is that 18% of these couples have known their partner less than 1 year. 35% have known them 1 to 2 years, and 53% of those 2 years or less. What we want to understand here is, if you have a chance to review session 1, we emphasized how important it is to have at least 2 years of being either divorced or widowed or widower, even before we think about remarriage. And then, of course, 26% have 3 to 4 years, and 26% have 5 or more years. So whenever we're encountered with a couple that have known each other less than 2 years, we definitely want to make sure we bring this to their attention, that it may be a good idea to at least have those 2 years behind us before we even start thinking about remarriage. Now, the other challenge we have as pastors, how many months until the marriage do they come to us for pre-remarital counseling? 39%, 2 or less months. This is not going to be effective. It is not going to work if we just have 2 months or less to work with these couples. 42% come to us 3 to 6 months, and 81% less than 6 months. We are going to need at least 6 months to work with these families, and we'll see why in just a few minutes, why this is so much different than it is with premarital counseling and couples that are getting married for the first time. I just wanted to note here that the vast majority of couples that begin their premarital preparation within 6 months of the wedding, more than 1/3 of those are within 2 months, and once again, that's just not going to be the amount of time that's going to be effective in doing the premarital counseling. 59% of those in this study have previously been married, 37% have never been married, and 4% are widowed. Now, this is a key component of our pre-premarital counseling process. In the number of children that come into these step families that are being created, 27% have three children, 27% have 2 children, 20% have 5 or more children, and 17% have 4 children. And here's the key component here. The number of children in happy and unhappy couples is equal, yet we know for a fact that bringing children into a blended family is one of the major stressors. And when we get into the intervention in just a second, we're going to see how this impacts and what we as pastors need to know in order to be effective in this pre-premarital counseling. Another statistic just interesting, 20% of the couples have said yes, they've broken up at one time during their relationship. So 34% of unhappy couples versus only 11% of happy couples had ever broken up. This is, once again, another trigger to be looking for. When we have couples that are coming in to create a blended family, and if we get a notification that they have broken up in the past, it's going to take a little bit more intervention into this pre-premarital counseling process. The other thing we've learned through this study is that couples naturally anticipate step-family issues as a potential problem of their marriage. 70% agree that they expect difficulties dealing with blended family issues. 75% expect that a child or children will put additional strain on the marriage. And 72% said creating a blended family will stress our couple relationship. Yet, with all this anticipation, it is clear that couples are not aware and do not know what to do about these issues. So today, as we look at these specific interventions that as pastors we can do to help our couples, we will be bringing out much to light as to the challenges that these couples are anticipating but are not aware as to how to work on them. Elizabeth Einstein, a well-respected step-family author and trainer, stunned a group of ministers when she told them to make remarriage difficult for couples in their churches. And a reason for this is that remarriage divorce rate continues to be at least 60%. So once again, we know that the chances of success in a second or third marriage is much less than that in a first marriage. And once again, unfortunately, both within the church and outside the church, we're now in the 47 to 50% range of first marriages failing. We know specifically that the presence of children and the strain of a parent-child alliance is put on these blended families, and also that parental decision-making puts on the couple relationship, what a strain that does. So the remarriage divorce rate for those with children is 50% higher than the remarriage divorce rate for couples without children. This is a huge concept that we as pastors have to understand, that when we bring children from 2 families or 1 family and no children, but we bring a completely different component into the marriage that we obviously do not have in the premarital work we're doing with first-time couples who are getting married. How do our first marriages affect the second marriage, and what do we need to know about this concept in working with our pre-premarital couples? Well, again, Elizabeth Einstein addressed this where she demonstrated that the way baggage from the first marriage carries over to a second marriage. Remarriers are more willing to end a marriage, and I see this consistently in my practice, is they will start talking about divorce at a much earlier stage of the crisis than in a marriage, in an original marriage or marriage, a first marriage. And that if there are behaviors we learned in a first marriage and failed to identify them then or now and work to change them and our response to them, then we are more likely to take them into the new relationship. And so, pastors, I would encourage you to spend a lot of time as to what were the challenges of the first marriage. Why did the first marriage end? Be honest. Ask them to be honest with you as to what was the feedback they got from their ex-spouse as to what happened. Because we are creatures of habit, and we're going to think that because we're going into a new relationship that something magical is going to happen. But unless we understand what our challenges are and what happened in our first marriage, then it's just going to be natural that we're going to take those same disciplines into our second marriage. Because our past marital interaction and the thinking and beliefs that we developed, we are likely to be more hyper-vigilant to the similar behaviors of new partners that reflected or reminded us of our prior experiences. Now, let me explain this. All that wording, what that basically means is the things that bothered us in our first marriage, if we see it or have it in our second marriage, we are going to be even more affected by it. Here's an example. If in our first marriage our spouse cheated on us and our marriage ended because of an affair, we get remarried, and now our new spouse is coming home late from the office, or our new spouse goes out and says, I'll be back in an hour, and then 2 hours later isn't home and forgets to call and say, oh yeah, I remembered I had to take this the dry cleaning over to the dry cleaners, and then I got at Walmart and I forgot it was the weekend that we had no tax, so it's just jammed. What's going to happen is all those behaviors that we had from that first spouse that was negative and that we learned about is going to be reflected on our new spouse, and then this new spouse is going to walk into the house and going to be bombarded with, where were you? Why are you late? What's going on? And this then is going to be what we call a destructive interaction. There are two patterns of interaction that occur over time in a relationship and move a couple towards terminating the marriage. Couples whose communication is characterized by negativity are more likely to divorce. This pattern begins with criticism and complaining, and it's a more common starting with a place for wives, but this leads to defensiveness. So once again, going back to the example we're using, if that spouse walks in and gets bombarded with what we call the old brain, this idea that he's out cheating on me, he's out, I can't trust any man or whatever, and walks in, this, of course, is going to lead to defensiveness instead of being able to talk about it in a constructive pattern. The partner who receives these defensive reactions will likely respond with contempt, and that contempt leads to stonewalling, which is a more common behavior in husbands that includes withdrawal behaviors such as leaving the situation. Now, one thing we know specifically about the genders and how genders operate, men are designed with the fight or flight instinct. This has been inbred in us for years, back to the time of the cavemen. And we do not like to fight with our spouses. So what we'll see is the natural inclination is to get away from that and to walk away. But our wives, who are emotional and better at emotionality than we are as men, they want to come to a resolution to an issue. And so we get into what's called a Pac-Man scenario. The men are walking away wanting to stonewall, wanting to just get away from the situation, and thinking that this is going to help by not getting into a fight. The wives who are wanting to come to a resolution to it are following the men, and like I said, you can envision the concept of Pac-Man on the screen. So you have the man going away and the wife coming towards him, and now we have our Pac-Man mentality. So what do we as pastors need to know about pre-step-family couple counseling and how to be effective? Well, first of all, it is our job as pastors to make sure that our couples are not blindsided by the complexity children bring to the remarried relationship. Once again, I'll emphasize that if I see an issue that comes up more often than not in the counseling process with blended families, the children, while they're not the issue per se, they are the genesis of a lot of the issues that come about. So in premarital counseling begins with what you already know. We're talking about the pastors, we as the pastors, and common session themes will include the covenant of marriage, differentiating from one's family of origin, communication and conflict resolution skills. Now, what I'm going to say right here, in session 3, I'm going to spend the entire session on how do we work on and what do we share with our couples on communication and how to help them better come to conflict resolution. And what are the marital expectations? And, of course, finances and spirituality in marriage. Okay, so effective pre-step family counseling provides the couples a window into the unique dynamics of step families. This, at a minimum, requires that pastors study step families in depth, so they, in turn, can present a realistic picture of step family life to couples considering marriage. Now, when we talk about in depth, this, of course, is one part of the training that you're going through. It's better understanding what are the different dynamics in a step family versus a family of origin or first-time marriage. Like I said, Ron Deal, I like his work a lot, and he has very effective ideas on how to do the premarital work with step families. But there are a lot of great resources out there, and I will get those posted in the next session as some additional resources that you as pastors can look at in becoming better familiar on the different ways that step families are going to be counseled versus families of origin. Step families are uniquely different from biological systems in a plethora of ways, such as the differences that represent the major points of stress during step family integration. Now, how do we draw a picture of this? When you're counseling a first-time couple, usually they're going to be younger. They have the anticipation of getting married, having children, having careers, raising those children together. And with step families, we already have these things in place. We normally will have we'll find that step families, of course, are older. The couples are older. Children are already brought into the step family, and visions are going to be different because they're not creating the vision together, but they've had different visions created of the marriage, and so we have to help these step families understand that. So once again, I would recommend The Smart Step Family by Ron Deal, 7 Steps to a Healthy Family. This book does present a comprehensive overview of the unique qualities of step families, and it's designed to aid pastors, step families, and those considering remarriage in handling the stress points of step family integration. In fact, I would even recommend that you use it as part of your bibliography to have your potential step families, couples who come to step family counseling, read and process with you during the counseling work. And addressing the unique differences of step families at a number of sessions to a pastor's standard premarital counseling plan. This is why I'm saying 2 months is really not going to be long enough to work with a step family premarital counseling as you would with your standard premarital counseling plan. And in a second, we're going to see the specifics as to why. Effective pre-step family counseling addressing the practical challenges of step family living is more important to the couple's long-term well-being than addressing the elementary aspects of marriage. So again, one of the skill sets we as pastors need to understand and bring into this pre-step family counseling is that there's going to be some things that are we would consider elementary, but we still have to bring up with our younger couples and couples that are getting married for the first time. But again, these are two individuals that have already been in marriage, and there's some things that, like I said, we would consider elementary aspects of marriage that we may not have to address, and we'd be better spending our time on the challenges of the step family. So intervention priorities will need to be determined so decisions can be made about how sessions times will be spent. Now, the other thing that we don't work with in premarital counseling with couples who are getting married for the first time are what we call multiple subsystems. In effective pre-remarital counseling of step families, it is highly advisable that we include sibling sessions. So once again, now you will see the reasoning that we need more than 2 months in order to be effective in our pre-remarital counseling, as well as various combinations of adults and children. That would be the biological parent-child, the step-parent-child. This allows you as the pastor to evaluate the expectations, the adjustment issues, and concerns of each subsystem as it's related to the couple. Once again, it's not going to be shocking as you do some of this subsystem work to be working with a stepchild or a future stepchild, and for one of the words that come out of his or her mouth is they don't like, and unfortunately it's even more dramatic than that sometimes. I've even heard them say the word I hate, and they'll either be the potential stepfather or the potential stepmother. Now, if we don't effectively work with these subsystems prior to the marriage, then when they do say their I do's, they're walking into a hornet's nest. And just the challenges of from day one are just huge if we as pastors are not able to intervene at an earlier stage. So it says, you know, it's best, especially in early treatment, to honor the differing levels of attachment that exist by initially working with the biological subsystems. And all that means is it's okay to let the child express their true feelings as to how they feel about a potential step-parent, but then we have to understand that and help work with and find out what's going on. Is it a system of they feel they're being disloyal to their other biological parent if they come out and say, oh yeah, I really like Miss Nancy, or yes, I really like Mr. Bill. And this is not an uncommon theme for the children that we work with in these subsystems, is they have it in their mind that if they admit they like their new potential or future step parent, that they're being disloyal to their biological parent. So we have to let them know that it's okay, and that this, again, this step parent, and it seems cliche, but it's so true, especially with the children, to let them know that this step parent is not taking the place of their biological mom or their biological dad, but in fact is just another person to be in their lives and to love them. So when we talk about subsystem sessions, they also allow pastors the opportunity to assess the beliefs, the boundaries, and the interactional patterns within and between separate subsystems. Pastors can also assess the level of loyalty, conflict in children by asking the biological sibling subsystem, how will your mom feel when you begin enjoying your stepmother-to-be? So once again, this gives us an opportunity for earlier intervention into the potential problems that will arise when we do create these subsystems within our step families. And this is where we can also come out and share with our children that, you know, it's okay that you tell your biological mom that your stepmother is nice. The biological and future step-parent can then be coached in how this conflict may impact the child's responsiveness to the step-parent and what they can do about it. So if we do this earlier intervention, we are helping both the parent and the step-parent and the step-family itself become more cohesive earlier than later, and hopefully avoid a lot of the issues that come up that in step-families are not addressed normally. In addition, the child and sibling sessions will need to assess and respond to issues of loss, developing new relationships, changes in living arrangements, between home loyalty conflicts, and how the child perceives the new step-parent's role of authority. Now, when we bring children in from two-step families, once again, there could be an issue where one of the child always had a room to themselves, and now they're coming into this new step family and they're being told they have to share a room with your new sister, or if it's a boy, with your new brother. So to the child, that's a loss of independence. That's a loss of their connectedness to their biological mom and their biological dad, even though they may be in two households. These new relationships with these stepchildren, think about what it would be like to have your own siblings or just being a child by yourself, and the next thing you know, you're thrown into a family of brothers and sisters, stepbrothers and sisters, of course, that have a complete different way of doing life than you've been doing. So let's talk now specifically about some interventions that you as pastors can be effective in the pre-step family counseling. First of all, we have to help our families adjust their expectations. A lot of times our step families think that love will happen instantaneously between all our family members. Well, guess what? That's not the truth. In fact, it's far from the truth. This is one of the most unrealistic beliefs that's out there. It's deeply embedded in the individual's needs to restore a complete family. So we as step-parents and we as parents a lot of times will actually get angry with children because we don't see an immediate bonding to the to the step-parent from the step-child. And we have this expectation that, unfortunately, TV doesn't help. The Brady Bunch, many of us are old enough to remember the Brady Bunch and how that family just seemed to combine, and they had their little issues, but this is not really how step families work and operate. And then, of course, we'll go into it with the expectation. Now, we're talking about the couple's expectation. Oh, well, we're happy about this remarriage, and so our children are going to be excited about this remarriage and feel as happy as we do. Well, children are going to feel confused about the remarriage, both happy and angry, and sometimes sad all at once. I would tell you right now that whether a child goes through a divorce at 5 or 50, now that's an exaggeration, let's say 5 or 18, 5 or 19, there is still always something in the back of that child's mind that their parents somehow will work things out and get back together. And so we have to recognize this in our children, that they're going to always have that thought in the back of their mind. I've even had worked with children who see that both parents have gotten remarried, but still for some reason cannot give up this idea that somewhere down the road in the future, something miraculously is going to happen and mom and dad are going to get back together, and stepmom and stepdad and stepbrothers and sisters are just going to kind of disappear. Parents who expect their children to be happy and never sad about the remarriage frequently find themselves disappointed and in conflict with their children. And also that blending is the goal of the step family. It's the pastor's objective to help couples lower their expectations and find contentment with the different levels of attachment between family members. The paradox they need to be aware of is this: nothing slows bonding like the pressuring messages to blend. So let me emphasize this one more time. Very rarely in life do we tell someone to help somebody else lower their expectations. But in this case, if we are doing our jobs effectively as pastors in the pre-step family counseling, we want to help these couples understand that their expectations of instantaneous love, children feeling happy, that you are going to be the Brady Bunch, that this is not what it's going to be, and that we're going to want to find contentment, wherever we bring this family together, that's where we want to find our contentment, and let's don't push or rush bonding. Let it happen naturally. Again, if you remember in session 1, and we're going to reemphasize it again, in many step families, it takes 5 to 7 years to really become a cohesive family, and a lot of step families, they don't want to accept this, and so what happens is we create more conflict than we do to help resolve conflict. The other specific interventions we as pastors want to do in our pre-step family counseling is we want to challenge our couples in developing marital oneness. Pre-step family couples have all the relational skills they need of a first marriage couple. Again, they've been there, they've done it. We just want to help them become more effective. But we're also going to have challenges that we're not going to have in first marriages. They need the communication and conflict resolution skills training. And again, this need is tremendous due to the unusually high levels of conflict in the first 3 to 5 years of remarriage. Training in spiritual roles, companionship, decision-making, and finances. Step family financial patterns vary greatly from those first patterns. And we see that when we bring in a step family couple, they already have ideas about how to do money. It's not uncommon for me to see that step families, couples who have created a remarriage, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, they still have their own separate bank accounts, their own separate checking accounts. As couples in a first marriage, you work together with your biological children, and you have that vision that, oh, we're going to start a savings plans so our children, our biological children, are going to be able to go to college, and we're going to have it set up for them. Now, what happens when we walk into a step family and all of a sudden stepmom or stepdad are being told that their income is going to help be needed, or it's going to be needed to help send the stepchild to college when they're struggling with their own biological children. So again, in the first marriage, the marriage vision is much different than it is in a marriage vision of a step family. We as pastors need to step back and make sure that we can help them create that vision of what it's going to look like in a step family. The parent-child allegiance in the new couple. During the single-parent years preceding the new couple's courtship, a parent usually forms a close bond with their children. This is natural. If the biological parent is unwilling to sacrifice some closeness with their children in order to place their new spouse into a place of priority, a rivalry between the step-parent and the step-children will begin that leads to repetitive conflict and resentment. I can tell you right now, this is probably the biggest issue I see in my counseling practice, is where there is a step family that's created, but the biological step parent has a challenge of taking that stepchild down. And if you remember the pyramid of how has God created us and how do we make the right decisions, and at the top of the pyramid of relationships, of course, is God, our relationship with God and Christ. Second to it is always going to be our relationship to our spouse. Now, once again, in the first marriage relationship, this is pretty easy to do because we fell in love with our spouse first, and the children just naturally come under that. Unfortunately, in the step family relationship, because of these bonds that we create with our children during the time of singleness, and also because of the challenges we have, our step parents sometimes forget that the paradigm or the pyramid that we're using is still the same, that it has to be our relationship with God and Christ first, then our relationship with our spouse, then our relationship with our children. And many times I will see that one of the parents will just say, I just don't understand it. All the decisions we're making, or all the decisions she makes or he makes, are putting the child first, and I just feel like I'm just an outsider in this relationship. So as we continue with our interventions, we want to talk about, we have to help our step couples manage the ghost of marriages past. Someone is being haunted by the ghost of marriage past when painful experiences from previous relationships result in the negative interpretations of present behavioral exchanges. This is out of Deal's book again, but this is going back and using that same example, what we were speaking earlier in this session, is if your first marriage ended in divorce because your spouse cheated on you, and now you've gotten remarried, but your spouse goes out and is doing nothing but innocent behavior, being going to Walmart, going to Lowe's, working late because they generally are working late, but that behavior is brought back into this relationship, and that spouse walks into the front door and is immediately hit with accusations as to, I know you could have been at work this late, or how come it takes you so long to go to Lowe's when all you had to pick up was a couple of screws and a screwdriver. This negative interpretation leads to the overreaction to the spouse's behavior, which in turn escalates when the spouse defends himself or herself from what feels like an unjust accusation or attribution. And again, this would make sense. So the spouse walking in the door says, whoa, wait a minute, it did. Then I remembered that I had to stop at Walmart because you asked me to pick up something to cook for dinner tonight, and I just don't like being accused of this. And we will start seeing that these conflicts, which should not even be conflicts, start becoming into what they call these overreactions. We have to help our step families enhance the parental team. Unity of the parental team is a foundation to effective behavioral management and training of the children. Let me emphasize this again. Unity of the parental team is the foundation to effective behavioral management and training of the children. This is true in our family of origins, but we have to help our step families and the couples in the premarital step family counseling understand that they have to also be a team together, that they cannot override, they cannot have a child come to them and say, Mom, Dad, stepmom or stepdad said I couldn't go to the movies this afternoon, and then the step-parents say, or the biological parents say, oh no honey, that's fine, I'll talk to him or her about that. It's going to be imperative that they understand they have to make their decisions together. And then once these decisions are made about how behavior is done within the step family, then that they stand behind their decisions. So therefore, pre-step family preparation must help couples to function as a cooperative team, find agreement on how a household system of rules and consequences, and plan how to respond to the relational needs of their children. Now, I can share with you from personal perspective that how this works is maybe when the children are in the other biological parent's home, that other biological parent may not require them to put the dishes in the dishwasher after they eat, or they may not require their children to clean up their rooms. But when they come to your home, and this is being now the new step family's home, it's not going to be okay to have Amy and Sam be required to perform these certain acts, but not Bob and Sally because they don't have to do it at their other biological couple's home. When they come into your family, all the stepchildren have to work under the same rules and the same consequences. And so if it's a requirement that the children clean up their room before they do anything else or put their dishes away in the dishwasher, then those are the rules of your household, and it's going to be important that we maintain them. We also have to work with our parent and step-parent roles. Now, early in the remarriage, the most successful step-parent-stepchild relationships are those where the step-parent focuses first on the development of a warm family interaction style with the stepchild. Once the foundation of a mutual respect and affection is established, step-parents who attempt to assume a disciplinarian role are less likely to meet with resentment from the stepchild. How do we capsulize all this? Simply, I always counsel my step families that whoever the step-parent is, be the stepchild's friend first. Let all the disciplinary work be on the role of the biological parent. Now you're saying, that seems a little harder, but it's not. It really should be the role of the biological parent to be the disciplinarian at first of their biological children. And then, as this statement says, eventually the step parent will be able to start taking over some of that disciplinarian role, but we have to create a relationship first. And if the step parent comes in as the disciplinarian, there's going to be a bigger challenge in creating that role of or that relationship, and it's going to take more time, and in fact it could actually keep a relationship from ever being developed. And so we as pastors want to help our couples understand, as parent and a step parent, what roles are you going to play and how are you going to maintain those roles as relationships are built. And we have to help the children make adjustments. Reminding parents and step-parents that during the pre-step family counseling to be sensitive to the children and listen to their point of view facilitates the child's adjustment after remarriage. It reduces the child's need to resort to negative behavior to communicate their concerns, and a position of openness is balanced by gentle firmness and discipline is needed. Now, again, if we put this down and to one or two sentences, children, well, first of all, we all need a feeling of significance and recognition. All human beings do. Children especially, when they're going through this challenge of reblending a family and what are their roles into this family, and they're looking for these, what are their roles as well as everybody else. They're going to be looking for their significance into the relationships. Now, if they don't get their significance from positive reinforcement, they're going to get their significance from negative reinforcement. And so when I work with these children who are just doing the wildest things in their families, many times it turns out that all they're asking for is, they're saying to me, I just don't get my recognition, and they don't understand, what it is until we talk about it. But I've had them, once they start understanding this, I've had these kids tell me, yeah, you know what, I do behave badly because that's the only way I can get my dad's attention, or that's the only way I can get my mom's attention. And then when we start working with the parents and saying we need to start working more on positive reinforcement, guess what? The behavior from the negative changes over to the positive. So my question to you is, okay, is this just another trend that we're seeing as part of the counseling process? And as pastors, do I realize the importance of pre-marital counseling? Well, we've shared a lot of challenges and actually some negative information. What I mean by negative information, some of the negatives that can go into step families if we don't do the work up front. Well, here's the good news. If we as pastors are doing our job, becoming educated as you are today, and requiring pre-marital counseling, then the good news is step families have a high rate of success in raising healthy children. 80% of the kids come out fine when there's effective pre-marital counseling. The biggest source of problems for kids and step families is the parental conflict left over from the first marriage. It will not be the new step family dynamics. So once again, understand what I'm saying is, if we as pastors are doing our job, becoming educated as to how to do correct pre-marital counseling for our couples that are forming step families, that we're going to help them find that the dynamics, the challenges are not going to be from the new family, but the kids are going to be challenged by the conflict that's left over from the first marriage. After 5 years, step families are more stable than first marriage families because second marriages are happier than first marriages. And step families experience most of their troubles in the first 2 years. So we as pastors, this is what we're trying to get our step families to work on and understand and give them the tools and the skills on how to get through those first 2 years. But let's get them started off on the right foot. Let's get them started off on what it truly is going to look like and what are the challenges going to be. And then step families are not just make-do households limping along after loss, but we find out that all members experience real gains, notably the opportunity to thrive under a happier relationship. So that's the good news, pastors, is let's do our job. Let's make pre-marital counseling an effective ministry of our church. Let's make step family ministry an effective ministry of our church. And instead of being, again, adding to or helping to the statistics of the negative, let's start adding and building the statistics of the positive and create step families that have high rates of success, where the children are coming out fine, where it's not the new step family that's causing the challenges, but it's the problems that are left over from the first marriage. That after 5 years, we have stable marriages that are effectively raising children and are actually creating healthier dynamic children and families. So if you have any questions about pre-marital counseling or would like a copy of what is your parenting style assessment to use in your sessions, this is one I use all the time, and it's really a good start to start with our couples, is we let them use this assessment, then just send me an email with your request or question, and there's my contact information below. So Marshall, those are some ideas on specific interventions in helping pastors understand their role in the pre-marital counseling process, and the reason this is probably, I'm going to go as far as say, probably more important sometimes than the pre-marital counseling, because we know that the challenges are greater in second and third marriages, so our impact can be more effective and our impact can be greater if we're doing our jobs as pastors.
Rick, this has been very insightful and helpful. And pastors, I trust you've been doing as I've been doing, and that's taking notes and reminding myself to think through this, that, and the other. And so, Rick, this has been great. I look forward to part 3. So pastors, stay tuned. Ministry leaders, stay tuned as we look to part 3 of Rick's topic. And I trust that you'll be staying tuned to an email as we'll let you know when it's coming out. Rick, thank you so much. Lord bless you.
Thank you, Marshall.